Welcome back. It's April, and this is another edition of the Candid Connection. This month, Andrew will be talking about what's been happening in the state legislature, including a fury of healthcare bills, health policy bills that went through the House before they left for spring break. Ashley's going to be talking about what's happening on the federal level and if there's any news or updates there or what's coming. Also, April means it's Cancer Action Week month. That's right. Cancer Action Week is right around the corner. And so we're going to be filling in our listeners and viewers today in terms of what's happening around Cancer Action Week. And in line with that, our guest this month is Heather Hall. Heather Hall is a volunteer and an ACT lead in Southeast Michigan. And Heather's going to share her experiences, her joys and frustrations in terms of being an advocate for cancer patients here, but also advocating for the American Cancer Society Cancer Action Network. We're also excited this month to tell you about our new partnership with Karmanos Cancer Institute and McLaren Healthcare. For over the next year, Karmanos, McLaren, and ACS CAN will be joining forces to provide information on how the policies that we're working on today are impacting those in the field in terms of them being able to provide the care that patients need. I'm Andrew Shepers, along with Ashley Wakefield. This is the Candid Connection, brought to you by Karmanos Cancer Institute and McLaren Healthcare, the largest provider of cancer care and research in the state. Well, it's April. Welcome, Ashley, as
Hello.
We're back for another episode of the Candid Connection. And things are a little different this time, aren't they?
Yes, they are. We are very excited about a new partnership for this podcast. I'll let you kind of introduce and share the good news.
Yeah, no, thanks. So if you notice down here in the bottom right-hand corner of our screen, we've got a new logo up. And so we're excited today to announce a new partnership with Karmanos Cancer Institute and McLaren Healthcare. And over the next year, Karmanos and McLaren will be teaming up with ACS CAN as we kind of go through these episodes to really, talk about how the policies we're working on here in Lansing and in DC are really affecting those on the ground who are providing care for those facing cancer. So we are super excited to have them on board. And really, we were excited earlier this month in April to really share that announcement with everybody.
Yeah, it's going to be a great thing.
So look for more of that and kind of look for guests kind of going in and out through the podcast over the next year of folks that are really on the front lines dealing with cancer care here in Michigan and really doing a lot of good care and good research in terms of finding those new therapies and cures and whatnot that patients need. And so, but that kind of leads us into our first kind of segment as we talk about state updates.
Yep.
We've had a big month in March for patients dealing with treatments, right?
Yes, we have. It's been an exciting journey in the month of March.
It is.
So I guess bluntly put, our oral chemo legislation, House Bill 4354, passed out of the House Insurance Committee.
Yep.
Which was the first hurdle that, we kind of had to dance our way through. And, it passed out with flying colors. So we couldn't be happier. I know that there was a lot of efforts put behind the scenes, from our volunteers and also member to member. So, kudos to kind of our volunteer team and all the things that they did to make that happen. But then in quick turnaround, the very next week, the whole healthcare package that our bill is kind of a part of came before the House, the full House. And so, like whiplash, it also passed very successfully through the House. And so
I know, it's crazy. It was
very
super
crazy.
fast.
And the history on that a little bit clearer than I do, given that my tenure's been a little bit shorter here with ACS CAN.
Mm-hmm.
But it's pretty significant.
It is. Well, it's been a 15-year journey here in
Right.
Michigan, and so we're super excited to actually see this legislation move. This is the first time it's gotten out of the House of Representatives, where it's never moved before. It's been out of the Senate a couple times, but now this is the first time. This is the first time it's actually moved forward. And so, what folks really talk about when we talk about oral chemo fairness, what we're talking about is creating a policy that would either make the cost for patients of those oral chemo drugs at the same level as an IV drug, or it would have to be capped at a certain amount, which in Michigan it's $150. And so we're excited about that. But it's been a long time coming in terms of getting this policy passed. And these drugs are not just something you're getting like over the counter, right, Ashley?
No, there's a much more detailed and intricate process to get these life-saving pills into your home. And I think if you talk to people who have navigated this, if you've talked to doctors who navigate this for patients, and basically anyone involved in this process will tell you that it can be very complicated, overwhelming, and frustrating given the circumstances by which kind of the pressure of it all, right? I mean, if this is your cancer treatment, if you're facing a cancer diagnosis, to then have to navigate what patients have been navigating here in Michigan, I can't even begin to comprehend the stress that I think you can't quantify. So
yeah. Well, and so I think one of the real big things we heard during testimony was that, these drugs are really kind of handled at a specialty pharmacy level. And so, I'm not really in tune with that and understand what that is. And so we've actually got someone joining us today, Dr. Lucius Daniel from Karmanos Cancer Institute. Dr. Daniel, thanks for joining us today. And you're with the specialty pharmacy at Karmanos, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate being able to kind of be participating in Candid. But yeah, I am with the specialty pharmacy, Karmanos Specialty Pharmacy, and we handle the bulk of the oral oncolytics that are processed by the Cancer Institute downtown, as well as the network throughout the entire state of Michigan. So we're really excited about what we're doing and how we're able to help patients day to day.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. Well, first of all, thank you. I know that patients are really depending on all the great work that you're doing. But explain to us a little bit, what is the difference between a specialty pharmacy and maybe that Walgreens or Rite Aid that we're all used to going to?
Well, good. Thanks so much. Glad you asked. So specialty pharmacies are unique in that most of the drugs that are dispensed by a specialty pharmacy have some special handling procedures, special monitoring that needs to take place with regard to toxicity for patients. And they usually require a significant amount of legwork with regard to getting it approved through the third party insurer. So whatever your third party insurer is, there usually is quite a bit of legwork with regard to trying to get the product approved. So most of the time, your local Walgreens or chain drugstore doesn't have access to the product or the type of infrastructure to support all that is required in terms of managing and having the best outcome for patients. So that's how a specialty pharmacy is slightly different than what you would see at a chain drugstore or local retail pharmacy.
Gotcha. So you're handling, I'm assuming that these oral chemo drugs have some type of special handling. This is something that's going directly through you, or are there specialty pharmacies around the state, correct?
That is accurate, yes.
Okay. You mentioned a little bit before about kind of helping patients navigate a little bit, you know, on our side, when we talk about the policy, we really focus on the cost of these drugs and kind of what patients are facing. Um, can you explain a little bit? I mean, how much are you engaged with that work, and really, what are some of the hurdles out there that patients here in Michigan are really facing to get access to these?
Right. So I'm glad that you asked. So usually, depending on the type of coverage, usually commercial coverage is a little bit. There's so many different resources out there, but let's stay focused on what a typical cancer patient would look like. Usually, um, they're a Medicare Part D sort of patient, and they can have a significant patient out-of-pocket amount. They could range anywhere from, let's say, $900 to maybe $3,200, and that's pretty significant if you have to think about taking this product every month. So what we decided to do when we brought the specialty pharmacy online is to come up with processes and procedures and creative ways to handle how do we address this. So one of the things that we've done is there are external foundation dollars. So that there may be, let's say in the United States, there may be, let's say 8 or 9 different foundations that are able to assist patients with their out-of-pocket expenses. And usually it's not an issue if the fund is not fully funded, but there's some ways to actually get that patient pay amount resolved. In addition to some of the other things that we talked about, a prior authorization through the insurance coverage, but there are significant barriers and burdens in regards to getting the patient their first dose after the doctor prescribes it.
Okay. Gotcha. So, you had mentioned your biggest, your biggest, I guess, clients or folks you're seeing are really in Medicare. Are you seeing any folks that maybe have their own insurance, or they're buying their own insurance here in the state of Michigan? And the reason why I ask is that we know that the policy that we're working on here in Michigan does affect just those folks that pay for their insurance here in Michigan. Okay. And so, we hear folks that, that there isn't a lot, or there is. I mean, do you see some of those patients that may kind of come through your pharmacy?
Yes. So there are insurers that are headquartered here in the state of Michigan, in which we comes through our pharmacy. So they say, for instance, they go. I won't name any particular healthcare plans, but if there's somebody in the state that actually gets referred to any of the infusion centers or cancer infusion centers throughout the state of Michigan and comes through us and has a Michigan-based coverage, that happens often. Okay. So what it really means at the end of the day, if this oral parity legislation gets approved and gets signed off by the governor, it's going to place that oral agent, instead of that range that we talked about $900 to about $3,200, it's going to bring it somewhere into line and really ease the burden that patients are experiencing with regard to their oral therapy. And I know we had talked about this as a team before too. This is even more significant around COVID-19. So we would really love for this pandemic to go away yesterday. Unfortunately, we have to get comfortable with the disease and what's going on with it. So what does that really mean to the patient? That means that patients that would normally be coming to the infusion center, they want options in terms of what can we do in regard to my care. How can that be administered in an oral way and be delivered to my home? So one of the ways to do that is through an oral chemotherapeutic agent. Now, however, there are some ways to do it IV, but there's so many more burdens. There's so much more friction involved with trying to get that done. The less friction is involved on the oral chemo side. So the order can be written, all of the funding can be done, it can be shipped directly to the patient's home. That significantly reduces that burden. And so that oral parity piece, if we're able to get that moved out of the way and resolved, it's going to represent a significant relief to patients and a significant relief to providers and how they access these oral chemo agents.
Yeah, no. Well, it's great to hear that. I think that we've been sharing that message to lawmakers for what may feel like way too long now. So, but we'll keep doing it. Well, Dr. Daniel, thank you so much for joining us. Huge insight. We appreciate everything that we learned today about specialty pharmacies, and I hope that you would be able to come back and join us again.
Absolutely, I enjoyed it. It was my pleasure.
All right. Thank you again, Dr. Lucius Daniel from Karmanos Cancer Institute, working in their specialty pharmacy. And so it's great. And I think it really provides a lot of insight and I think a lot of kind of backup in terms of what our arguments have been. So, man, that was great. Well,
Great insight.
Thank you again.
It's good to hear it from a different angle. I think sometimes as us as patient advocates, we know and we've heard the stories over and over and over. And so to see it on the other side and from a different angle, it just confirms what we've been working towards. And our volunteers, it's why the passion hasn't waned in 15 years.
No, I agree. I definitely agree. So, well, we have one other state update in terms of things we're working on. I know you've heard a lot about oral chemo over the past several days, but we are doing a little bit of appropriations work around tobacco prevention appropriations. And we had our first discussion last month with the Senate chair of the committee looking for a $200,000 appropriation to kind of help cover our quit line shortfall, but then also taking a look at other issues in terms of promoting that program and getting that information out to folks. And so we had a very good meeting and really kind of started a discussion and conversation of just not this term, but what can come further on in terms of trying to do some of our tobacco work here in Michigan and making sure that folks are supported. So, so look for that, more to come on that. But now I know that we're going to shift gears and talk about DC a little bit. And Ashley, you want to fill us in on a couple things happening in DC?
Well, the short of it is they're on break right now.
Well, and they're on break here in Michigan too.
And so, what we shared in last month's podcast kind of still is the same. It's a little bit, it's not as fast and furious as what it can be in other times of the year. But our volunteers are definitely taking action. We had a couple last minute requests this last month around some Medicare, Medicaid kind of issues. And then what we're going into, much like in the state, we're going into appropriation season. So there's more and more coming up about that. So, the short, Andrew, if I'm being really honest, is TBD, because we're all kind of in a holding pattern as far as what that's going to look like coming up.
Gotcha. Okay. Gotcha. So I know that aren't there a couple lawmakers we're kind of really focusing in on here in Michigan in terms of working on some of our...
There are, yeah. And it's an emerging story. But we have some, honestly, in the country, we probably have the highest concentration of congressmen and women who are connected to the appropriations element and the asks. And so
Gotcha.
We'll be working with those members. And again, that list is kind of evolving. I would hate to just throw it out there.
Gotcha. Well, look for next month or 2 months here in terms of information coming out in terms of working with Congress. But April's a big month for us, isn't it?
It is, yes.
And so we're really getting into Cancer Action Week, aren't we?
We are. And, we have a great group of people registered. I am so thrilled with who has agreed to come back. I know it's a virtual thing again this year. And so, we're excited about what that offers. I think that we've learned a lot about what we're capable of in the virtual world, but also kind of playing the dance of not, just exhausting everybody. We're in this is like the slow grind of the pandemic right now.
Yes.
And our volunteers have showed up and they're excited, and we have a lot of really great things planned. So at the time that you're hearing this, our registration has closed. But I will tell you to find us on our social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. All of the handles are at ACS CAN Michigan. If you just look those up. And throughout that week, which is the last week in April, the 26th to the 30th, we're going to have things happening that anyone can participate in, whether you registered or not. So
That's right.
Stay kind of in the know as far as that. If you haven't followed us on all those platforms, go ahead and just click the like or follow. It really helps us with sharing our message more broadly on the social platforms.
Yeah, that's great. And I think another place to go is, if you look scrolling on the bottom, head to our website at fightcancer.org/ HMI to find
Right.
information there. But a lot of the up-to-date information coming out on our social media platforms. So make sure to check those out. But it's exciting, Cancer Action Week coming up, and that actually kind of leads into our next segment. As you know, we're going to sit down with a volunteer of ours, Heather Hall, to kind of talk about her time as being a volunteer and really getting engaged in these Cancer Action Weeks, aren't we?
Yeah, we're super excited to highlight Heather. Heather is an athlete on our team, a very active one. She also chairs our media and outreach committee here in the state. So quick plug for our committees. If you haven't been involved with us as a volunteer before, you feel a little overwhelmed. Heather is a great example of how you can kind of tiptoe in and get involved with as much or as little as you as you'd like or your time allows. But what Heather brings to the table is she just has a lot of experience, a lot of passion. She'll share briefly, but she's a 3-time cancer survivor with endless energy. So I cannot wait to hear her perspective on Cancer Action Weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be a great interview. So stay tuned. Join us right after this quick message from our partners from Karmanos.
If you're a patient with, a relatively rare type of cancer, you may see a medical oncologist who treats that and has a great deal of experience in that specific type of cancer.
We do need experts in every different field to be able to deliver that integrated approach.
At the Barbara Ann Karmanos Cancer Institute, all the staffs are focused on one thing and one thing only, and that is to deliver the best care for you, the patient.
Hey, Heather, welcome to the Candid Connection podcast. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to sit down in this platform and talk to you. I feel like I get the privilege of working with you a lot behind the scenes, but we get to introduce you to our listeners today. And more specifically, we kind of just wanted to go over a little bit of kind of your involvement with ACS CAN, your advocacy work. But if you could give us maybe a little bit of background, how did you end up here? How did you end up with ACS CAN? What's your story?
Oh, it's been a long journey, but a good journey. I am a 3-time cancer survivor, and I was diagnosed at 21 with my first cancer, which was osteosarcoma. And, even just going through that, it was a few short years before had I been diagnosed, amputation was one of the primary treatment protocols. Well, thanks to research and new, studies and new treatment, limb salvage became a big thing. So I'm very fortunate that I was able to have my femur removed and replaced with titanium. And then just over the years, I really got to see the difference that new treatment options, research made, and it made me very passionate about getting involved. The biggest reason I got involved with advocacy and ACS CAN, to be honest with you, is my dad was diagnosed a year after I was diagnosed with bone cancer. And he was initially given 3 months to live with multiple myeloma. And thankfully, after asking around for a bunch of different opinions and different doctors, we found a doctor who said, no, I'm aware of a new treatment. And long story short is just over the course of the next 6 years, thankfully, we had new treatment options, and he was able to live 6 years because we were always one step ahead of that. And that impact for me, what really, really inspired me to get involved in advocacy and to be able to see the difference that we can make. I am living and breathing thanks to the efforts of advocacy, new research, treatment, preventative screenings, and all of that. So it's a huge passion for me.
Yeah, that's very clear. And what a powerful story. Now, kind of moving a little bit deeper into what advocacy looks like for you, to maybe the listener who isn't quite as involved or hasn't, is just kind of on the peripheral, what are some of the things that you have found to be really effective in advocacy in general and kind of the actions that we take? Because I think that's a word we use, right? Like we get it. But what does that look like in practice for you?
I always tell people that every action that you take makes a significant difference. And I have the passion that I like meeting with representatives, and I'll go anywhere. You could ask me to go anywhere in the country or the world to fight cancer, and I will do it for you. But I know that can be intimidating to people who say, oh, I don't have the time, or I don't quite want to do that. So I always tell people, send an email, make a phone call, even if you leave a message on an answering machine, like that makes a difference. Your signature on a petition, everything that people say like, oh, well, that's so easy. And I'm like, exactly. Like those, again, it's like, to me, every action is a reaction and it's a positive action. Plus, I always point out, think about it, if thousands of people are taking that same action of, making a phone call or sending an email out, can you imagine the positive impact that it is? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think advocacy can look at all different ways, whether it's, like you said, meeting with a representative or picking up a phone or forwarding. I mean, I always say to people, if you can't get involved in a way of like meeting with your representatives, share every single thing that ACS CAN shares or posts on social media or do whatever. Just encourage it, forward emails, just really engage people in every action because it all makes a difference.
Yeah, no, it certainly does. There's power in numbers, as it goes to that. Now, kind of in the vein of we're anticipating and looking forward to our Cancer Action Week, which is a very concentrated week of the actions that you described. But more specifically, we get to meet with our lawmakers. And so I'm curious, what have you found is kind of the best way to help create that relationship? And, because it can seem a little intimidating. If you're on the outside, or you're just starting, what have you found to be the best way to kind of build that relationship with your lawmakers?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, I always remind people that they're people too, and that, more likely than not, especially in today's world, they too have been impacted by cancer, whether it's them personally or a family member, a friend. And so we all have that cancer story, right? So that right away, to me, gives us a common bond that we can talk about. I also am a fan of developing relationships. So if I'm meeting with a representative for the first time, sometimes I'll just do a simple Google search, put my journalism background to use, and I'll just kind of research to see if there's something that might trigger a conversation starter or anything like that. And then again, just meeting with people. CAN especially does a great job of preparing volunteers to walk into a meeting so that they have messages and resources, and you don't have to be an expert on the actual bill itself, maybe know the basic of it and everything, but there's so many materials that are presented that people just have to be willing to share their story, because our personal stories are so impactful. I think that's the greatest piece of advice I learned when I was starting out in advocacy was our stories, our cancer stories make a difference. The staff, the professional staff or the others can really give the background on the particular bill, but by tying in. So there's times when, I'll go in and talk about, when I was in DC a few years ago with CAN, we were talking about cancer research. So when I met with one of our senators, I shared that it was, a couple of days before my birthday, and I had just finished treatment, 3 months before. And to be honest with you, I kind of started crying in the meeting because it was so impactful to me to be able to say to her, thanks to you for supporting research funding and new treatment and all of this, I am alive. And I can honest to God say that I'm alive because of these efforts. And so, keeping that in mind. And then I like to do follow-up. I always send thank yous. I always look for opportunities to send cards. You probably know I'm very big on looking for all of the little tie-ins that I can do just to really remind them that, their decision-making at that level as a representative does make a difference. And again, it goes back to those simple acts of sending a thank you card, sending a Thanksgiving card, sending, all of those different things.
Yeah. And just really, it sounds like building rapport with them.
Yeah.
Like you said, to begin with, I mean, they're just people, right? And we're building relationship with people, and every little thing kind of builds on that. And yes. Now, as you were talking, I feel like I could just see your wheels turning of all really special memories, that you have had throughout the years of your advocacy journey. Do you have any, favorite as we approach Cancer Action Week, or any type of, interaction with lawmakers or each other, like your fellow volunteers? What are some favorite memories that you have of participating in something like our Cancer Action Week?
Well, you just touched on it too, that one of the things I love about volunteering and being an advocate are the other staff members and volunteers that I get to interact with. I can tell you this, in 20 years of being an advocate, I have some of my best friends have come out of the volunteer efforts and actions that I've taken. We have fun. It's a serious topic. It's an emotional topic that we participate in, of course, but we have so much fun doing it. And so there's just been a lot of, I love meeting the different people whenever I volunteer and participate in these type of events. But there's one in particular, when I went a couple years ago to DC, Sander Levin was still in office. He's now retired, but we went on my birthday. Actually, was our lobby day happened to fall on my birthday. And for me, I was like, what better way to spend my birthday? Not everybody thinks like that, but for me, I was like, what better way to spend my birthday? So I had also done a little bit of research on my representative, and his birthday was 3 days before mine. So when I walked in, as soon as we started the meeting, I just said, before we get started, I want to say happy belated birthday. And he was kind of funny at first because he's like, what? How did you know it was my birthday? And I didn't want to tell him
the internet.
Yeah. But in sharing it, I kind of used the angle when we were talking about different bills, because I had been told going in as a heads up that he hadn't really been a co-sponsor of one of our bills. And so I just laid it out there and said to him, here's all of our bills. He was very engaged and asking a lot of good questions. But I said to him, I really, really would like you to make my birthday one of the best by co-sponsoring this bill. And sure enough, at the end of the meeting, he looked at me and said, happy birthday. I'd be happy to co-sponsor this bill. I really do support it and this and this. So yeah, that was always kind of a fun story. We walked out of there and all the other volunteers were like, oh my God, that was amazing. I did invite him to have a drink with us that night too, but he did decline. So
Hey, whatever it takes to kind of build that rapport. Oh, this is why we love you so much.
yeah.
What a great story. And again, kind of weave throughout this entire conversation with you has been the element of they're like us, right? But they have some really incredible power when it comes to changing policy that affects cancer patients and really can change the trajectory of our cancer stories that we all have. So thank you for sharing that. Now, Andrew and I like to kind of end our interviews, if you will, with a little bit on a lighter note, so our listeners can get to know a little bit different side of you. But as you know, spring is almost here, or was here, and then the snow.
I think it was just snowing just a minute ago.
Just snowing,
as
but
we're sitting here taping.
I'm going to pretend that it isn't, and spring is here. But it's a favorite season for a lot of people, maybe not for some. But what are you most looking forward to in this season in spring?
Oh, I am so excited that I can't wait for our nicer weather to stay, because I feel like since the pandemic has hit, like it's changed like the impact of each season, right? And so here in Michigan, I love to be outside, like outdoors nature, that it just like replenishes my soul every time I'm outside. But with a rod in my leg, I have to be really careful in the winter time. So for me, spring is that opportunity where I feel like I'm one of those people where it's like, envision throwing open the doors and you're like, it's here. So I can start getting outside. I love to bike and hike. And so for me, just being able to get back outside and enjoy the fresh air. And again, with the pandemic, I'm excited because vaccinated or not, I'm still being really cautious. And so it's just nice to be able to be outside and start seeing people on walks and hikes and all of that. So I kind of feel like it's, kind of reviving my soul and my energy.
Yeah. I think all Michiganders can really.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yes. I played golf for the first time.
Hey.
Right? Yes.
4 days ago. Like, it felt great just to be outside and walk around.
Yes.
So.
Gosh, Heather, thank you so much. We really appreciate sharing your story. Like you said, it's really powerful for others to hear it. And you do really great work. And we're so thankful to have you part of our team.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. And just one last thing is, like, if you're new to being an advocate, don't be scared of it. It's fun. Like I said, simple actions make the greatest impact.
Love that. Thank you so much.
There we go. Thank you again, Heather Hall, ACT lead here for ACS CAN in Michigan, joining us today and providing great advice. Remember, it's fun. Come join us. So again, Heather, thanks so much. We appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Ashley. Well, that's it. I mean, we've concluded April. Some exciting news around oral chemo, but we've got May ahead of us, and hopefully some more success in the oral chemo realm coming up.
That's right. And, join us. One last plug for Cancer Action Week. Join us even if it's on social media or by sending an email or something like Heather described. Little actions make a really big impact. So
Yeah, so yeah, feel free to head to our website, fightcancer.org/MI, to go ahead and get information there. Check out our social media. But, we just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. And we're looking forward to seeing you in April.